Hello and welcome to our podcast. Rosie's in a rush today. We have 2 hours to record, meaning I've got to be on my bestest ever behaviour. Hello and welcome to our podcast. I'm Catherine, that's Rosie. What's the name of our podcast?
26 to life. Because after 26 years of
Fantastic.
friendship, we've been together for longer than our life sentence.
Yeah. Go and follow us on everything. We are 26tolife_pod on Instagram and Facebook. No, we don't have Facebook. What am I talking about? On Instagram and TikTok. And we are 26 to Life Pod on YouTube and Spotify. Warning, as always, our podcast contains difficult topics, so please, listener discretion is advised. Go.
Woo! Oh, we're not doing any chit-chat. Okay, let's do it. Okay,
We don't have time for chit-chat today. You told me no messing around. I'm on my best behaviour. I can do this.
Okay. So, Karen Buckley was born in Cork, Republic of Ireland in 1991. She was the youngest of 4 children and had a normal upbringing alongside her 3 older brothers. So she was
I have
the
a
youngest.
question.
Go on.
The Republic of Ireland isn't in the UK.
Yeah, I know, because she moves. Spoiler
Okay,
alert.
Okay. I'm so sorry. Karen Buckley, Republic of Ireland. Sounds like a great gal.
She graduated the University of Limerick with a degree in nursing and then moved to Essex in England. Wow, look at that. If you just waited 30 seconds, I would have told you.
Did you grow up?
Moved to Essex, where she had gotten a job at the Princess Alexandra Hospital in Harlow, which, actually, fun fact, was where I was born.
You were born there? I know, Harlow. Because you grew up in Essex.
Yeah, but actual Princess Alexandra Hospital, the hospital that I was born in. Crazy. But I also didn't grow up in Essex, so stop trying to trigger me. She worked there for just a couple of months, but then she relocated to Glasgow, where she began studying a master's in occupational therapy at Caledonian University. She moved here in January. I see different sources saying different things, but it was January, February of 2015. So this all happened incredibly close to where I live right now. Like, some of the places that I talk about, I go there on a regular basis, or I have at least been there before. So it was like, I actually was telling some of my friends about the podcast I was doing, some of the people that I cold dip with, and then they started talking about all of the different cases that they're interested in and all of the ones that they've known about. And then we just kind of got into that talk to be about, oh my God, and do you remember this one? And oh my God, do you remember this one? And this was one of the ones that came up, and I was looking into it and I was like, oh my crap, like, this is actually so local. Like, this is scary. Like, some of the people that are involved in this went to the gym with people that went to the same gym as people that I know. And one of my good friends here, her friend is was the PT of somebody in this story, which is like, I don't know, it's just not very far removed at all, which I find kind of terrifying at the same time. So
what I've taken from that little story is that the people that you cold dip with and see every single week aren't listening to our podcast.
No, they are. What do you mean? Why wouldn't they be listening to it? We were talking about all of the cases.
Oh, you just said it as in, like, I was telling him about this podcast that I've started, and I was like, whoa, okay.
I mean, there are like 20 people that goes to these dips, and most the normal ones listen. Right. She lived in what is known as the West End of Glasgow, so it's not like an official name, but this West End pretty much stretches from the city centre through to a place called Annie's Land, and it's about like
Annie's Land.
Annie's Land, yeah. It's like just a long stretch of road that goes to the west of Glasgow, and it's generally where a lot of students live because there's easy access to the uni. What are you laughing at?
Nothing. I'm keeping all the things that I want to say to myself.
What do you want to say about West End of Glasgow?
It's just West End, and then Annie's Land. I was just like, it's a lot of musical references, isn't it, for Glasgow? I wasn't really expecting. I also don't call it Glasgow. I call it Glasgow. It's just a lot of musical references for Glasgow. I wasn't expecting it, that's all. But did you see how I didn't bring it up? You made me bring it up.
Well, that's because you're doing these faces, and I know.
I'm trying to keep it inside.
She was a kind and compassionate person, and she loved travelling and going out with her friends. And that's exactly what she was doing on the night of 11th of April 2015. Her and 3 of her friends had a few drinks at home and then headed to the Sanctuary nightclub.
That's
So
a weird name for a nightclub, isn't it?
yeah, it's a little bit weird. But 11th of April 2015, she'd literally been in Glasgow for 4 months maximum, and she was 24 years old at this point. They arrived around 11:25 p.m. and queued for about 20 minutes, finally getting in at about 11:45 p.m. What? What now?
Do you remember the days of being 24 and being like, okay, I'm going to start queuing at 11:25?
I
Jay
never
has
did that when I was 24. When
okay, maybe 18 then, but Jay has literally booked us a Valentine's dinner, and our reservation is for like 5:45, because I was like, I need to be in bed by 9.
Oh, yeah, for sure. When I was 24, I was never clubbing. I hated it even when I was at uni. Definitely not. But I guess she was still technically at uni, and she was in a different country, essentially. She was just living her best life. So again, I've seen a few different accounts of this, but around 1 a.m. she left the club. So some sources say that she told her friends that she was going to the bathroom and didn't return. And then some people actually say that she told her friends that she was leaving. But either way, she left around 1 a.m. All of her friends were concerned about her leaving alone, but she assured them that she'd get a taxi and let them know as soon as she was home. Go on.
I'm asking a question, but it's not for the stupid reason that other people ask it. I'm asking, was she drunk?
She wasn't. They say she
Okay.
wasn't drunk, and that'll
But
come
the
up as
reason
well.
I'm asking that is not because I'm like, oh, was she drunk? I'm like, you know, like when you go to the toilet and then you realise how drunk you are, and you're like, oh my God, I just need to go home. I don't
Yeah.
want to be here anymore. I'm not going to try and find my friends in this club. I'm just going to get out, get in a cab and go home. Like, I
Yeah.
wouldn't be surprised if it's not like she did it on purpose, said I'm going to the toilet and then ran away. It's like she said I'm going to the toilet, got into the toilet and then realised, actually, do you know what, I'm not doing this anymore, I'm going home.
Yeah.
But you only realise when you're sat down on the toilet and your head is spinning.
Yeah. So her friend said that.
But you're saying that she wasn't.
Yeah. So one of the sources that I saw about how she told her friends that she was going home, they had specifically said that her friends weren't worried as much because she wasn't drunk. So they thought, okay, because she's like somewhat sober, she's more likely, like, I don't know, you kind of trust. Otherwise, if she was
Has her
super
wits
drunk,
about her.
yeah, I'm sure someone would have gone with her if she was like inebriated. Okay, so
Rule, Ashley Flowers rule, crime junkie rule, life rule: never leave alone. Never ever leave alone.
Always
never
stick
let your
together.
friends go alone. Always stick together. Yeah. Don't ever, just don't do it. Just stay together. It's not your fault. And I wish that women were safe, but you're not. So stay together.
Amen. So the next morning, her friends found it odd that Karen hadn't been in contact and she hadn't returned home. But they had a late night. She could have been sleeping at somebody else's house. So they weren't too concerned. Some of them roommates, some of them are friends. But by midday 1 o'clock, when they couldn't get in contact with her, she hadn't posted anything on social media, they contacted the police. So it was a pretty quick. They were like, I guess it was kind of that thing that when something bad is happening, you're like, I don't want to overreact, but at the same time, this could be serious. And so I'm glad that
either.
Exactly. So I'm glad that they did, and it was pretty sharpish. So a few facts about the Scottish police and Glasgow in general that I found, which I did not know about. So in 2012, Glasgow ranked second behind Amsterdam for the highest rate of murders in Western Europe.
Behind Amsterdam?
Yeah, which I thought was strange.
Weird. I thought they were all like super chill.
Same. But that was only in 2012. So this was only 3 years later. And one Irish journalist during a press conference asked about the relevance. So an Irish journalist, because she's from Ireland, they'd obviously come over to cover it. And during like a press conference, they asked about the relevance of a knife that had been recovered by divers from a canal. And the Scottish journalist literally laughed at him and was like,
yeah, we have loads of them. Don't worry about it. Exactly. They're all over the place. Don't look in too many bins or bushes.
They literally said, do you realise how many knives are found when even one stretch of a Glasgow canal is dredged? But because of this, police in Scotland are particularly renowned for its high-tech investigative techniques and the number of detectives with murder probe experience, which means that they are perfectly equipped to deal with these kinds of things. So something to note about this case is that it all moved incredibly quickly, and I don't think the police made one wrong move, but like damn, they were really, really good. And there are a few parts of in this story that you might doubt them, but just give them the benefit of the doubt until the end of the story. So within 24 hours, they had over 100 detectives.
Am I mad at
working
the
on
police
case.
or not?
No, you're not mad at the police. You might feel mad at the police, but like I said, benefit of the doubt until the end. There are a few points where you might get frustrated, but remember this whole case happened over the space of a week. So there are like lots of ups and downs that you might be like, yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So within 24 hours, they had over 100 detectives working on the case. Normally, so I watched a program, it was called Murder Town, but they basically cover loads of different cities and all, like, some of the specific cases that have happened. And in that, they were interviewing the detective superintendent that was on the case, and he said that normally missing persons are found within a quarter of a mile of where they were last seen. And I didn't know that. I mean, I kind of knew that,
like
but
a statistic like across the world?
I don't know. I didn't really look into it that much. That was just something that he said. So I don't know if that was him actually, his knowledge of Glasgow in general, or if that was like a common thing. But with that, they thought, okay, we'll start with a CCTV to track her movements from the club. When they first looked into Karen's life, there was no like aggressive boyfriend. There was no background of violence or drugs or anything. So that's why they started to look at the CCTV. There were no arguments in the club, nothing of relevance that happened while she was in there that would have given reason for her to want to leave early. But anyway, they then checked the CCTV from outside the club and they showed Karen leaving around 1 a.m. She wasn't drunk, she wasn't staggering around. The Detective Superintendent Jim Kerr, he said himself that she looked aware of her surroundings. You know, she, like you had described, she had her wits about her. But around the same time, there was another man walking back and forth outside. They started talking, crossed the road together, and then walked towards what was assumed to be the man's car. They think that this man basically offered her a ride, and she agreed. But she said that she wasn't. They said that she wasn't under any duress. She didn't look as if she was forced anywhere. And so they were like, okay, suspicious, but we're not worried just yet. Go on.
You might not know this, but actually, I'm saying, oh no, I know. But when did Uber become a thing?
I don't actually know. I feel because like
I'm just thinking about it in areas where, like, if I go out of London and there's not a huge amount of Uber drivers, right?
Sometimes there are taxi people that are like, oh, yeah, I've got my taxi.
Walked out of a train station and there's a taxi rank and I've got in a taxi. Now in London, I'd be like, that's weird. I'm either getting in a black cab or I'm getting in an Uber because I know I'm being tracked on both of those. But it could be that, like, I'm saying, oh no, as in like, oh no, please don't do that. But it could just literally be that simple, that it's a person. And it's so easy to make a taxi look like a taxi, but it's not a taxi.
Well, yeah, exactly. But at this point, they just thought, okay, she doesn't look stressed. She looks pretty comfortable. She looks pretty confident. We know that she wasn't drunk by speaking to her friends. So maybe she did just get into a car and made it home, or something else happened along the way. We don't know.
She knew him.
Maybe she knew him. So they basically then tracked this man's movements backwards to kind of see if they could figure out who he was. The manager of the club was finally able to recognise someone who was talking to him, so they spoke to that person, and they then were able to identify him as Alexander Pacto. So his last name is Pacteau. His father was French.
He's French,
which is probably where that came from. So he was 21 years old and he grew up not far from Glasgow city centre in quite an affluent area called Bearsden. His dad owned his own courier company and his mum was a stay-at-home mum, and they did pretty well for themselves. So Bearsden and Mulgai are both they're like just outside of the city centre, but they are known for having quite fancy houses, you know, where it's a little bit more posh, a little bit more high end, but with still great connections into the city. So Alexander was known as a troublesome child. He was a bit of a social loner and was described as obnoxious and often causing mischief. Red flag. I'm just kidding. We don't know anything about him yet. So he originally went to a private school. However, when his dad's business,
so many things that I want to comment on, and I can't.
Go on, comment on them. Go.
Okay. Firstly, I don't like that being a social loner is troublesome. Like, okay, I understand the obnoxious thing. Yeah, you can be obnoxious.
Yeah.
But to be socially on your own, leave those people alone. I feel like they sometimes they're not a problem. They just want to be on their own. And the other thing is, we need to stop using the word mischief, because mischief is so cute. Mischief is such a cute word. When they're like, oh, and he was charged with criminal mischief, and I'm like, what do you do? What do you do?
You're ridiculous.
What do you do?
You're ridiculous. He originally went to a private
film over the toilet. That's criminal mischief. What do you do? Yeah, put a bucket of water on top of the door.
That's enough. He originally went to a private school. However, when his dad's business started to fail, he switched to a public school. When his parents split in 2013, he originally lived with his mum. Then he moved in with his dad, but had a falling out with his dad's new partner, so then eventually moved out and into a shared flat into the West End.
How old was he?
He was 21. So on the night of April, when he moved into the West End, he would have been 19. So he was 21 in 2015 when this all happened. So
he kind of moved out even though he didn't want to. Like, he moved out because of he didn't get on with the stepmom, not because he wanted to move out.
Well, yeah, I guess so. Yeah, that's what it seemed like. So on the night of April 11th, when Karen was getting ready to go to the sanctuary, Alexander and his friends were having the same idea. They had all gone to Alexander's flat to have pre-drinks and had ordered 2 taxis to take them to the club. There were about 8 of them altogether, so it was Alexander and 7 friends. However, only one of the taxis showed up, so Alexander decided to jump in his car and drive the rest of his friends through to the club. It didn't say how drunk he was or anything like that, but it wasn't a far drive, so perhaps he did just, break the law a little bit, but he got there safe and sound. Go on.
Can I just clarify, do you ever find when you're listening to American podcasts, they talk about how they go out for drinks and then they drive home? Do they have a way higher legal limit than us? Because
it's 21.
No, I mean how much you're allowed to drink before and then still drive.
Oh, in America?
Yeah, because they always talk about they went clubbing or they went out for the night and then they drove home. Is it designated drivers are always a thing? Or is it that they have a way higher legal limit? Because we are allowed.
I think it's the former about legal designated driver. They pretty much so.
No. Go on.
He and his friends had arrived at around 11:38 p.m. and went straight through. They didn't have to queue because they pre-booked a booth. So Alexander had left the club apparently to get something out of his car, which is when he bumped into Karen at around 1 a.m. and it's assumed had offered to drive her home. On the afternoon of Monday, 13th of April, so this was 2 days. I mean, this in fact
just over 24 hours because she went.
Yeah, this was 36 hours after she'd gone missing. The police knocked on Alexander's door. He didn't answer, so they got in contact with the landlord, who pretty much gives them a key and takes them back. But this time, when they go to the flat, Alexander is actually inside. He'd basically just not answered the door. He said to them, I was just coming to see you about that missing girl.
Oh, funny.
Wow. Alexander told the police that he and Karen had returned to his flat to have consensual sex, and then she had left around 4 a.m. the same morning, and he never sees her again. This would have been about an hour. I looked up, very basic, one area to another area, and it would have been about an hour walk from Alexander's house to where Karen lives.
No,
and the show that I was watching, the detective superintendent, he basically said, this seems like a reasonable statement. We had no reason to think otherwise. They treat him as a person of interest, but yeah, they
No.
don't. They're like, we are. You know what? It seems like a reasonable explanation. So okay, fine. Now it's unclear the exact timeline here because when I was reading things online, it says one thing, but then the TV program that actually had the interview with the detective superintendent, he said a different thing. But then
You can call him the Supt.
the search. Well, I'm just going to call him Jim Kerr, because that's his name.
Supt. Yeah, that's what they
But-
write it as. Supt.
Okay, stop it. So, I mean, I want to say that I will go with what Jim says, but at the same time, he's obviously relaying this at a later date. So whether or not all of the timeline is in exact order, I don't know. I don't know whether I should trust more the timelines that were written about in articles. I don't know. Either way, but basically, at some point over the next few hours, it must have been on Monday, to be fair, he was taken in for questioning. They searched his pockets and found a receipt for drain blocker, caustic soda, and 2 small keys like those you'd use for a padlock. And it was during this questioning that he changed his story. But basically, Alexander admitted that Karen had hit her head on the bed frame when they were having sex. He hadn't realised that she had been bleeding until he woke up the next morning and saw blood on the bed. Hearing the news of the missing woman and realising that he was the last person to see her alive, he said he panicked. He cleaned his entire home, takes his mattress and clothes to a forest near Drummond to burn them, and that was that. They still say they're not treating him as a suspect. They're like, okay, that's fine, but you need to stay in a hotel because we're searching your flat. No big deal. At first glance, a few things caught their attention. There was, in his flat, in his bedroom, a toolbox, parcel tape, and some nail brushes that were all in his bedroom. The whole place...
Do you mean like a...
Yeah, that's what I think, yeah. The whole place smelled of bleach, and his mattress didn't fit the bed frame. But, I mean, I have packing tape in my spare bedroom because...
Sorry, the mattress didn't fit the bed frame?
Yeah, so basically it was like a double-sized bed
normal.
frame. Yeah, exactly. So it was kind of...
Especially for a student. Like Leo's
Well, he wasn't
bed
a student.
Oh, okay. But I'm just saying, like, Leo's bed is an IKEA bed and the mattress is just a regular single mattress. They don't match exactly. It's not the perfect... That, to me, is not suspicious. Yeah. What is suspicious is everything else.
See, but for me, like, packing tape, I have packing tape in my bedroom because I pack packages all the time.
You haven't got a person who's just gone missing. You're not saying, oh, I slept with her, smacked her head on the bed frame, which then started bleeding. I then let her wander off into the night at 4 o'clock in the morning and she was never to be seen again. And your house doesn't entirely smell of bleach. And also, you just... drain unblocker. Like, who even keeps... If I was to buy this stuff in real life, like just because I got a blocked drain, you would not be able to pay me to find that receipt. There are times that I want the receipt and I can't find it. And you are so stupid that when you go in to be interviewed, you keep the receipt for your murder box toolkit.
You don't know
in your
that.
Pocket.
You don't know.
But you keep the receipt for your potential murder box toolkit in your pocket. Don't ask for a lawyer and then come up with some cock and bull story about this. No.
See, that's the thing.
If he
Stop it!
He's an idiot.
Oh my god.
Idiot.
Can you let me talk? So, they said that he spoke very confidently, very comfortably. He was happy giving all of the details. He seemed like a genuine guy. Jim was like, he's not a suspect at this point. We're just doing our due diligence. We're taking samples from his house because if that is the last person that she was seen alive, then we want to make sure that we can corroborate his story. They then also take in Alexander's car for testing as well because, again, the same reasoning. They want to make sure that they can corroborate their story and show that she was alive in that period, in those sequence of events. They wanted to lock in as much as possible from those sequence of events around her disappearance. So they still say they're looking for a missing a missing person. They've not said that this is a murder inquiry. They've not said that they think that she's died somewhere or has been murdered. They are still just looking for Karen, hoping that she's alive. So the next morning, on Tuesday, 14th of April, Karen's parents, who had travelled from Cork to Glasgow, spoke in a press conference asking for their only daughter to return to them safely. The whole of Ireland were waiting for news of Karen. So it was in this press conference that Jim Kerr said, quote, "We are gravely concerned that Karen has come to some harm, whether that is down to foul play, criminality, or she has taken unwell or had an accident is obviously still to be established." End quote. He also said that the man seen with Karen outside the club, we now know as Alexander Paktobi, they hadn't named him at this point, was assisting them with their investigation, but he wasn't a suspect. In the
so
same
they
breath,
didn't give his actual name. They just said,
No.
we know who it is. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, we know who it is, and he's assisting them with our investigation, but he's not a suspect at this point. And in the same breath, they let the public know that they are tracking the movements of a grey car seen driving around Drummond and nearby Mulgai between 11 a.m. and 3 p.m. on Monday the 13th. But it wasn't clear exactly at that point why that was connected to Karen's disappearance. They were really just keeping their cards close to their chest and not giving much away. Go on.
Did they search, did they say anything about finding anything in the forest? You know, where he said, like, he burnt his stuff?
Not yet. So on the same day, just 20 minutes before the press conference, someone handed in some of the first pieces of evidence. So it turns out that hours before Karen had even been reported missing, at 7 a.m. on Sunday, April 12th, somebody had found her handbag in Dorsham Park, which is in Annisland, which is like the other end of the West End.
Sorry, remind me, is that near where the club was? Or where
No.
her house was?
No, so this is closer to where Alexander lives, but it was still a little bit of a distance from where he lives. So it wasn't a natural route from Alexander's house back to town. So police are thinking maybe she did actually leave, but then came into trouble, had to take a longer route home, and then something happened to her in the park time. So the person who had found the bag had stolen her phone and factory reset it, deleting all the messages and history, but then when they realised the significance of what they had found, they handed it all in. I'm assuming that they'd looked into this person because they didn't say that they were ever a suspect or a person of
What
interest.
a delightful human being.
Well, I mean, that's not the worst thing that happens in the story, so I'm not even going to waste time talking about how wrong it is to steal someone's phone.
No, but you can restore that, right? Police would be able to restore that.
No, they weren't able to find anything. I don't think you can restore it once it's been factory reset.
Surely you can, because otherwise people could just... Surely you can. Do you remember that phone in the Essex lorry murders that was like... And they
Yeah, but that was like broken apart. You can still repair it and put things together, but when it's factory reset, it's reset. Like, I don't think you can.
I thought the whole thing is like nothing's ever deleted. It always exists somewhere.
That. Well, they didn't get anything from it. They then asked Alexander to come into the station to give a statement. He's again entirely cooperative, he's articulate, he's comfortable, confident, and he told the story again in great detail, and again he's allowed to leave. While they completed door-to-door searches and meticulously combed through Dorsham Park, the police reassure everyone that the man that she had been with was not a suspect. They really were pushing this home. They were like, he's not suspect. You don't have to worry about him. We're doing everything that we can. So it's almost as if they were trying to lull him into a false sense of security, like trying to keep him on side so he cooperated or didn't run. Like they didn't want to make those sort of movements, you know? Exactly. So when the evidence that they collected from Alexander's flat had come back positive for Karen's blood, they were able to finally treat him as a suspect and detain him for questioning on Wednesday, 15th of April. So under Scottish law, police can only detain someone when they suspect them of a crime and can only arrest them when they have enough evidence to charge them with the offence. So it's like you can't arrest someone and then build a case. You have to only arrest them when you know that you have a case.
That's the same here.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah, because it's just not the police's final decision. So the police... Oh, maybe it's not the same, yeah. They have to send it to the Crown Prosecution, who will then determine whether or not there's enough evidence to charge them.
Fair enough. But at this point, they hadn't found Karen's body. They didn't know if she was still alive. They didn't know anything about her last movement. The fact that there was, in fact, blood.
But don't you have to arrest someone for a criminal charge? Like, you are arrested on suspicion of... Because if you don't have a body, they don't know if she's alive. They don't know if it's a murder.
No, but they didn't... So, wait, maybe I got that wrong. But they haven't arrested him yet. They only detained him for questioning. So... And could treat him as a suspect. So they hadn't actually officially arrested him yet. They were just because of the positive test for Karen's blood, they were able to treat him as a suspect, knowing that there was blood.
Well done to them for getting that DNA swabs back so quickly. Usually that takes bloody months.
Yeah, they said that it was fast tracked ASAP.
They're a bit CSI, aren't they?
So they wanted to know where Karen was. They wanted to know what happened to her, but without more than the presence of blood in his apartment, there wasn't really that much that they could do. However, within an hour of detaining him and appealing for information about Alexander Pacto, someone got in touch. Within an hour. They called and they said, "No, stop!" Someone called and said that when they heard they were investigating Alexander Pacto in regards to the missing woman, they thought that they had information that might prove useful, and prove useful it did. The man used to work with Pacto in a fireworks business. They basically used to sell fireworks, essentially. He told them how Pacto had used a farm at High Craigton on Stockymuir Road, near Mulgai, to store the fireworks, as there were a number of sheds and storage units on the farm. So Mulgai and Drimmen, which is where this farm was also the area on which they had said that they were looking for a grey car driving around suspiciously. And guess what kind of car Alexander Pacto drives?
A grey car. So did they know that from the CCTV outside the club, or does he have two cars?
No, they knew that don't you remember that they had already taken in his car?
Yeah. But what I'm saying is, was he not suspicious of their very, we trust him, we like him, he's not a suspect, not this man, but we want to know about a grey car that was driving around this area? Was he never oh...
Well, yeah, but they already had his car for evidence. They were saying, yeah, we're looking for this grey car that's driving around this area, but in the same breath, like I said in that press conference, they were saying this man is not a suspect. We're not treating him as a suspect or a person of interest. He is merely a witness in this case. So they weren't linking any of it together. So, I mean, it seems like he
is an idiot.
Yeah, pretty much. So, what kind of car Alexander Pacto drives? A grey Ford Focus. So within 30 minutes of receiving the tip, they head up to High Craigton Farm and look for recently locked storage sheds, because remember he had those small keys in his pocket that looked as if they were of a padlock. So they were looking for these. So in one, they found
that wasn't the receipt. I thought you said the keys were on the receipt. Okay, he actually had the keys.
Yeah, he had receipts and keys.
Cool, I'm with you.
So in one of these storage sheds, they found a large blue barrel with a padlock on the outside. They waited for fire and rescue to come and confirm it was safe to open, because obviously he'd also bought caustic soda, so they didn't want to open it and it be like a biohazard. But when they did, they found inside a human body. And that was then later confirmed to be Karen Buckley. After a post-mortem, it was revealed that Karen Buckley had suffered a number of soft tissue injuries to her neck and had received a series of heavy blows to her head, which had fractured her skull and led to subdural hemorrhage, while she also had defensive wounds to her arms and hands.
What does it mean by a soft tissue thing? Is that like bruising, or is that like cutting?
No, soft tissue would be bruising.
Bruising, okay.
Yeah.
Also, you said defensive wounds.
Defensive wounds. That's because I was stressed because you had your hand up and
Sorry, I was trying to de-stress you by putting my hand up.
No, you're literally always stressing me. She also had defensive wounds to her arms. She also had defensive wounds to her arms and hands. When the police questioned him after discovering the body, he changed his story to say that she hit her head on the bed frame during consensual sex, became angry and started slapping him, and he reached for the nearest item to hand, which was a spanner, and began hitting her around the head. So now, all this time, they kept saying he wasn't a suspect, but it turns out that while they had shared so much about their investigation to the public, they had also been doing another investigation behind closed doors, which had been piling up the evidence against Pacto the entire time. So when he told them this story, when he was detained for questioning, they already knew that he was lying, and they knew that he'd been lying the entire time. So using CCTV, phone records, and witness statements, they pretty much tracked every single one of Alexander Pacto's movements from outside the Sanctuary Club in the early hours of Sunday 12th all the way through until they first questioned him at his flat on evening of Monday 13th. So now I'm going to go through the whole timeline. And so this, like I said, was all pretty much on CCTV, witness statements, and then there are some things that they also kind of pieced together themselves. So at 1 a.m., Alexander and Karen got into the car together, and the car was seen at around 1:06 a.m. driving towards a road called Kelvin Way. Then at 1:18 a.m., so about 12 minutes later, he was seen leaving Kelvin Way and driving back along the road from which he had come. It is believed that within this 12-minute period is when he killed Karen by choking her and hitting her over the head
in the car.
In the car. Hitting her over the head with a spanner multiple times. And in this scenario, it meant that the police knew that she was already dead by the time he had taken her to his flat. He then drove around for a while before dumping her bag at Dorchon Park in a bin, and at 2 a.m. he returned home, went inside to get a sheet, wrapped her body in it, and then brought her inside to his flat while his flatmate and his flatmate's mother, who was also visiting, slept. He went to bed. He slept until 8 a.m. and then used his mobile phone to Google the properties of caustic soda, also known as sodium hydroxide. At 9:42 a.m., he drove to B&Q and bought 6 litres of caustic soda, as well as a mask and gloves. And then he went to Pound Stretchers, where he bought more caustic soda.
On a budget, are we?
He went home, put Karen's body in the bath, and then tried to submerge her in the sodium hydroxide caustic soda kind of solution that he'd made. At 12:38 p.m., he texts his housemate and asks when he's going to be home. So when his housemate says that he's going to be home at around 8 p.m, he's out hill walking with his mum. How adorable. He pretty much bleaches the bedroom and everything that could contain evidence. He makes an incision in Karen's abdomen in an effort to get the solution to enter her body and speed up decomposition. And at 5 p.m, he drains the bath and moves Karen's body back into his bedroom wrapped in a duvet. At 8:15, his housemate and mother arrive home to find him cleaning, even still, at 8:15 p.m, and Alexander goes to bed at around 8:30. Now, Monday the 13th, at 4:52 a.m, he goes to a nearby canal and he dumps the murder weapon. He then drives to Tesco on Mary Hill Road. The spanner, yep. He then drives to Tesco on Mary Hill Road and asks a staff member to recommend cleaning products to remove bloodstains from a mattress. At 6:27 a.m, he goes to another... Can you
imagine being that Tesco worker?
I know, honestly.
Oh, God. Then, well, I have bloodstains on every single one of my bedding.
Well, that's the thing as well. Like, you could have... Like, if he had just said, oh, I had a nosebleed, or oh, my girlfriend had her period, like... I don't know, you might not think anything of it, but obviously this person thought it was relevant to be able to come forward and be like, yeah, this weird guy was asking about bloodstains. At 6:27, he then goes to another Tesco in Mulgai, which is literally where I do most of my shopping, and he buys white spirits, a lighter, and then drives to High Creighton Farm to burn Karen's clothes and some blood-stained evidence such as cloths and sponges. At 8:34 a.m., he orders a large blue barrel from a storage equipment supplier and then goes to collect it. At 9:38 a.m., he buys even more caustic soda from Pound Stretchers and then heads home. And then he is then seen by a neighbour struggling to carry his mattress, a large suitcase, and the duvet down the stairs and into his car. At 10:41 a.m., he drives to High Creighton Farm, stopping at Asda to buy lighter fluid, and then burns the mattress, duvet, clothes, and the suitcase. And at 11:19 a.m., Pacto returns to his flat. He fills the barrel with a mixture of drain and block of fluid and caustic soda solution and submerges Karen's body. At 2 p.m, a neighbour, I don't know if it was the same neighbour, but if it was, then good on them. They then see him struggling to bring the barrel down from his flat.
It's not funny, but he's so dumb. He's so
how
stupid.
else? But this is the thing. Like, how else do people actually get away with murder? Because surely there are always people watching, and like a body is not an easy thing to transport around.
You had no plan. You honestly, from the second that they met you, you couldn't be quiet. And sorry, just while you were doing that, you know, for my last case, I was talking about how much CCTV there is.
Yeah.
Glasgow falls on that list at 4th with 47,000. It goes London, Birmingham, Leeds, then Glasgow. So it's above Manchester, Nottingham, like some other really, really big university towns.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure it's smaller.
Yeah, I mean, this also stretches from Glasgow city centre. Like, Mulgai and Bearsden are technically in East Dunbartonshire, but it's...
But there's still a huge amount of CCTV.
Yeah.
Like, you are caught doing so much throughout the day. I think it's insane that people think that they're going to get away with these things.
For sure. So he then drives back to the farm with the barrel, again stopping at Asda to buy 2 padlocks and more white spirit. And at 2:35 p.m, he meets with a farmer and agrees to rent the storage shed for £10 for the week, which is actually super, super cheap.
Sorry, I don't understand then. How did the person who tipped them off about the fireworks know about the storage locker when they worked together if he's only just rented it now? Or is he saying that he used to rent it then and he's renting it again now? Okay, yeah, so he's not had it rented the whole time.
No, they just know that. So they heard his name. They heard that they were looking for a car driving suspiciously around Drimmen and Mulgai. And then he put 2 and 2 together and said, "Hi, I know Alexander Pacto, and I know that he used to rent storage sheds in that area where you saw suspicious activity." So he then goes back down to Mulgai. He then goes back down to Mulgai Tesco to buy another padlock, goes back to the farm, locks the shed, and then goes back home. And at 6 p.m. on that same day, Monday 13th of April, is when the police knocked on his door. So they pretty much already knew exactly what he had done, how he had done it. It was just, they didn't know exactly where this farm was. So they needed that final bit of evidence to know, because obviously you can't just go onto every single farm and look in all of the properties that are up there. So it wasn't until that person...
Do you have any dead bodies on your property? Yeah.
Exactly. So, and obviously, of course, if other people are renting storage sheds, you can't just open everybody's storage containers and be like, just check in for a dead body. So it wasn't until that man gave them that clue to link him to High Creighton Farm that they were like, we have got him. So then in the time leading up to his trial, they collected as much evidence as they could to ensure there was no doubt in his involvement. A cadaver dog confirmed the presence of a dead body in Alexander's car. They also found blood in the front seat, which obviously if he had killed her or she had been bleeding in his bedroom like he had said, there never would have been blood in the car, so liar. They were able to recover the murder weapon, the spanner, from the canal where he dumped it. A forensic soil scientist matched soil from Alexander's car with the soil found at both High Craigton Farm and the turning point at Dorsham Park where her bag was found. Although his car had been valeted and he'd cleaned it quite thoroughly, they were still able to find that soil underneath on the base of his car and in certain treads of the tyre. So they were like I think that was like the one piece of evidence that really brought everything together. But they
Really?
also
The soil? I thought it was pretty
but
compelling even without the soil.
yeah, I know, but it wasn't. That was like hardcore evidence that said you were 100% here. There's no other way that you could explain that you were both at Dorsham Park ditching her bag and at High Craigton Farm. I don't know. Yeah, that was pretty good. They recovered the remains of a partially burnt mattress which had Karen's blood on it, and they also found Alexander's fingerprint inside the blue barrel where Karen's body was found.
Wow.
On August 11th, 2015, Alexander Pacto pled guilty in a court in Glasgow to the murder of Karen Buckley and was later sentenced to life in prison with a minimum of 23 years.
That's not much.
Not much, no, not at all. But so I was torn about this.
Oh, it's because he pled guilty, isn't it?
Yeah, but I was torn about this because they said that it was premeditated because it was later released that Alexander had been seen on CCTV stalking another girl outside the club until she hailed a taxi and went home, not realising that she was obviously so close to not making it home at all. But I don't understand how it could have been premeditated when he wasn't supposed to have his car, because they ordered 2 taxis, but only one of them arrived, and so it was only
as
then
soon
that
as
he drove.
As soon as he then decides he's going in his car, that's it. Premeditation doesn't have to be days or weeks in advance. Premeditation can just be like, oh, what a fortunate turn of events for me, the murderer.
Mm.
I can now use my car, like, to do that as well. My question is what's he done before this? Because nobody starts on that.
So it turns out that Alexander Pacto had been charged with creating counterfeit notes. He would basically photocopy £20 notes. He was found guilty, given community service, and they pretty much thought that that was his first conviction, which it was, but it wasn't the first time that he'd been in court. So in 2013, he was charged with attempted rape of a woman, but was acquitted. He was acquitted, and I couldn't find the details around why he was acquitted. But in the TV show that I was watching, the woman who was attacked wrote a letter to a government minister of Glasgow about how concerned she was about him being a part of the community after he was cleared of the charge.
So if he hadn't been acquitted, Karen Buckley would still be alive.
I mean, that's not necessarily, because he could have been charged, had a reduced sentence, and still been out in time, and it wouldn't have stopped him from committing another crime.
No, but
really.
I just think okay, maybe not, maybe that's me reaching, but I just think, I've said this before, people who kill people, usually women, men who kill women, usually don't start at murder. They start at other things. That behaviour makes an appearance very, very early on. And we give them the lightest sentences possible. Like, I don't really care about the counterfeiting. Who cares? But
yeah,
we give such light sentences. It's nearly impossible to prove so many things. We give such light sentences for abuse and sexual violence. And then when they escalate to murder, we're like, oh, where were the warning signs? Everywhere. The warning signs were everywhere, and you literally didn't look.
Yeah. Oh, for
and
sure.
I'm sorry,
No,
there will have been other things. Like, when we talk about how it's not all men and blah, 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 blah. Okay, but was your friend making that girl feel uncomfortable? And did you just laugh about it? You know? Was he yelling at that girl who was walking alone down a dark road? And did you just leave him be to carry on doing it? Like, I don't believe that nobody noticed any kind of signs that says this person is a danger to women, But because society has kind of deemed these things, I don't know, laddish, funny behaviour, people don't call them out on it. And people find it
Yeah.
awkward to call people out on it. And
And that's
I
the thing.
just don't get that. Just call
I
someone
have,
out. If you were being a dick, I'd call you out.
oh, for sure, all the time.
But girls
But
are just not phased about doing that.
oh yeah, no, 100%. And because there's a different culture around girls and their friends as men and their friends. But what I found interesting was that I didn't hear anything from
The friends.
Alexander's friends. Yeah, exactly. So whether they had anything to say about the whole situation, if they had any comments on his behavior or anything like that. The only thing that I did see was that his mum had spoken to the press and said that he didn't have anything to do with it, and Karen was seen walking alive after she'd left her house, which was a lie. But
Oh dear.
she was adamant that nothing had
Again,
happened.
you can
He
love
wasn't
your child
involved.
without defending their behaviour, because all you are doing is enabling it. And I feel like I've ranted about this in so many cases, and it's just a thing of this behaviour doesn't start from nowhere.
Yeah.
And I don't know why. Boys, it's like, oh, it's embarrassing to call him out on being that. No, it's embarrassing to be that
It's so
guy.
embarrassing.
It's literally embarrassing to be that guy. Imagine if you were like bullying someone or making somebody feel bad or making someone feel scared. I'd be like, what are you doing, you absolute psychopath? So
Yeah.
if a man is doing that to a woman, why would you turn around and be like, why are you making her so uncomfortable, you weirdo?
Yeah. And the thing is that if they think, oh, they're thinking, oh, it's not cool to like call out your friends, and oh, they're just trying to be funny. But at the end of the day, if I was being harassed by a man and one of his friends said, why are you doing that? Leave her alone. I would think that guy was the cool guy. You know,
Yeah, of course.
I would think the guy that had stood up to his friends was the cool one. So Mr. Scullion, which I think was Alexander Pacto's attorney,
Mr.
was asked
Scullion.
was asked to convey an apology to Karen Buckley's family, and he basically said the apology, and then he was like, but I recognise that nothing can be said on his behalf which is likely to lessen the pain, but those are my instructions, so I've had to do it. So it was quite funny to read that he was like, he says he's sorry, but I know it doesn't make a difference, but I have to do it because it's my job, so I'm sorry that I've had to say sorry. But in good-ish news, in November 2016, Alexander had to be moved from his prison cell after the guards heard of a plot that was circulating around other inmates to attack Alexander Pacto. So everyone, even the lowest of criminals, hate him. So they think that this is going to be the case pretty much anywhere he goes.
Is he not on
Which
like a
was
special prisoner wing?
no, well, he had to move completely, so I don't actually know where he is now.
Guys,
He
if
didn't
you're
say anything.
planning things, do it better, do it quieter.
Yeah,
Come
tell
on.
me about it. But I will end on something that Karen's dad had said and his statement to the press afterwards, when Alexander had been sentenced. Today's life sentence will not bring our beautiful Karen back. Our little angel has been taken from us forever in the cruelest of ways. We mourn for her every day. It will, however, ensure that women are safe from harm from the truly evil coward who took our beautiful Karen's precious life. I hope that he is never released and spends every day in prison haunted by what he did.
I hope
Yeah.
he spends every day in prison. And I hope that if any parole hearings come up, there are enough people there who are like, do not let this man out
Yeah.
because.
He is just a predator. Like, he was just an evil, evil person. There was no motive. There was no like reasoning behind it. It was just a cold-blooded
It's a power
killer.
thing.
Like,
It's like a disgusting.
yeah, he just did it for the sake of killing. Like, he was just waiting for somebody to come along to get into his car. It was just, oh, it was just absolutely horrible, horrible.
Well done to the police.
Oh, for sure. Within like a week, she went missing she was reported missing on Sunday, and it was on the Friday that they arrested him.
Good.
How crazy
Good.
is that?
Don't let him go through another weekend. Not another chance to do it again.
Yeah.
But also, what an absolute imbecile. Because
Yeah.
quite literally, he might as well have written a big sign on his forehead saying,
That's
"I'm the
weird.
dingbat."
Yeah. And this is what I mean is that like the whole time they were telling the public he's not suspect, he's not suspect. They were telling Alexander that he's not suspect, but then the whole time they basically had like they knew his movements. They could track the car that they were in and then tracked it the entire time, you know? Like they knew exactly where he'd been, where he'd gone, what he'd bought. They already knew all of that the entire time. They were just waiting for that blood evidence to come back as positive for them to be able to move forward with everything and to actually arrest him. So even though the whole time people were probably thinking, oh my God, how is that person not a suspect? Like, arrest the damn man. They knew all along that that was exactly what they
Am
were
I
doing.
also correct in thinking, and this might be a complete shot in the dark, and I don't remember, are you allowed, you can only hold someone for a certain amount of hours for questioning until you can charge them and stuff. Is that not a shorter time in Scotland?
I'm not entirely sure. I don't actually
I'm going to
know.
look into that. I think it's like, yeah, I think it's that they have less time in Scotland. There's something. Anyway, I'll do my Googling and get a law degree on the side,
Yeah.
Got to be done. Anyway, thanks for that, Chicken. I really enjoyed that one. It was really hard to not make all the comments that I wanted to. And every time you were saying the club, I just kept wanting to say the club. But I didn't. And Sanctuary is a weird name for a club because a sanctuary is somewhere peaceful and calm, and a club is not peaceful and calm. And other than that, I think I covered everything I wanted to say. So I think we did well. We got through it in an hour.
Yeah, that was actually really good.
I know. Aren't you proud of me?
Yeah.
I know. I need to go and call my mum now so I can get all my energy out and be like, Mum, guess what? Mum, guess what? Thanks so much for listening, guys. Please come back next time when... Oh my God, I don't know what I'm covering next time. And we're recording on Monday. Wild. I need to get on with my research.
I thought we were recording on Friday.
I need to get on with my research because we're recording on Friday. Please go and follow us on everything and share our stuff and just be nice to us.
Yeah,
please. We actually need you to do that. And yeah, love you.
Love you. Bye.
Bye.